All right, adjournment there at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry. Now, on the witness stand today is IDEC head Andrea Johnson, which sees the continuation of the IDEC stream. Now, Advocate Johnson starting off with details around the arrest of Lieutenant General Dumisani Khumalo, which has become the subject of much debate given the testimonies that have preceded hers. Advocate Johnson starting off by stating that Lieutenant General Khumalo was not arrested because of his role within the political killings task team. She says she actually wasn't even aware of his role in the PKTT, but says even if she would have become aware, such would have not impacted or influenced their handling of that specific case. She has also revealed that the complaint against Lieutenant General Khumalo came by way of a referral under Section 27 of the NPA Act made by Mr. Fadil Adams. But even before that, at the start of the commission, there were a number of administrative issues that had to be dispensed with, and this pertained to certain documents that had been subpoenaed by evidence leader Advocate Mahlapi Silo, and those documents quite crucial to this specific stream or this aspect around the arrest of Lieutenant General Khumalo. But it was the attorney of record for IDEC that went on to indicate that unfortunately they had not had enough time to consult with Ms. Johnson after she had taken ill, and that they only consulted essentially for the first time yesterday. And unfortunately, that matter of having certain documents that have been subpoenas brought before the commission, they were unable to do so. But while he was still on his feet addressing the commission chair, he received a message that the NDPP has actually instructed that all documents pertaining to the arrest of Lieutenant General Khumalo be availed to the commission. So those documents, we understand perhaps that now during this tea adjournment, they will now be made available, which will allow them at least in the leading of evidence to also refer to those specific documents pertaining to the arrest of Lieutenant General Khumalo. But we'll leave it there for now. My colleague Ayanda Nyati is at the Bridget Mabandla Justice College to give us a far more comprehensive understanding of what has been stated thus far. Very good morning to you yet again, Ayanda. Quite a lot of ground being covered, in as much as they started off with those administrative issues around other documents that must be shared. But nevertheless, we've heard at least the start of the processes of how they go on to decide on who must be prosecuted, and the focal point at this point being the arrest of Lieutenant General Khumalo.
That's right. And Mfundo, this is important because, of course, part of the allegations made is that there was some kind of witch hunt against Khumalo. And in fact, Andrea Johnson may have very well been part of that plan, the alleged plan at the very least. What she's told Commissioner so far is that when any kind of referral is made to IDEC, the only role she plays is ascertaining whether or not the claims, the allegations fall within the mandate of IDEC, and it is a separate team that then conducts the investigations and establishes whether or not there's enough evidence for there to be some kind of probable cause for prosecution. But before we get into all of that, let's take you to the part of the testimony where Andrea Johnson responds directly to this claim that was made that when General Khumalo was arrested, it was effected in a dramatic way, presumably to try and conduct some kind of humiliation ritual. Andrea Johnson pushing back strongly against that. Take a listen.
Upon finding him at Otia, the two investigators explained who they were, why they were there, why he was sought, and what his rights were. They then asked Lieutenant General S.D. Khumalo to accompany them to Brooklyn Police Station in Pretoria. He cooperated and was taken there. There was nothing dramatic about it. 17. At all times during his arrest, Lieutenant General Khumalo's security detail was with him. He was not threatened and was accorded all the respect that could be accorded a person of his profile. On the way from Otia to Brooklyn Police Station, the investigators had occasion to stop and get something to drink from a filling station at the request of Lieutenant General Khumalo for himself. Paragraph 18. Once Lieutenant General Khumalo had been processed at Brooklyn Police Station, he personally thanked Chief Investigator Perumal for treating him and the other co-accused in a respectful and dignified manner. This talks to anything but the conduct of a unit that is motivated by ulterior motives other than to address alleged criminality. Paragraph 19. I would be remiss if I do not dismiss the suggestion that Lieutenant General Khumalo was arrested because he was the coordinator of the Political Killings Task Team, in brackets, PKTT. This suggestion is anything but true.
So there you have it, Andrea Johnson saying that the arrest was not dramatic and in fact it had nothing to do with the fact that General Khumalo was part of the Political Killings Task Team. As you mentioned, Kenny Mapanga is our senior reporter who's also here and has been listening in to the first leg of this testimony, Kenny. And so far we've heard an Andrea Johnson really painting the picture of her following the rules and having everything above board insofar as Khumalo's arrest is concerned.
Indeed, and she's quite obviously aware of the kind of loopholes that emerged from Brian Pariachi's testimony, or a lack of explanation behind how his investigation met the requirements of a Section 27 referral. And that's why you're seeing the approach that is being taken right now, where she deals with the mandate first before getting to what informed the case. We already understood from Brian Pariachi that this is a prosecutor-led investigation. So she understands that this is something that is squarely her responsibility to explain as to how they become involved in this investigation, how they then pounce on Lieutenant General Dumsani Khumalo. She's also trying to get away from the issues surrounding this case being placed at the center of allegations surrounding the alleged factional wars around control of crime intelligence and how that affects the broader alleged SABC factional battles. And that's something that Lieutenant General Khwanazi has addressed and Lieutenant General Dumsani Khumalo has addressed in his evidence before the Madlanga Commission. And she makes it a point to state that when they arrested Lieutenant General Dumsani Khumalo, he allegedly, according to her statement, thanked Chief Peramo for the manner in which it was done, where he had access to his protectors, and that seeks to water down the claim that this was an alleged malicious prosecution or part of an alleged fight back within the SABC factional wars. But we still haven't gotten to the meat or the crux of the issues surrounding this particular case. This is still the ironing out of the issues. Mind you, she has 3 statements that she is set to go through, and I'm sure when the probing questioning begins, that's when we'll get to understand better what the flaws were about and what then the Commission must make of those particular flaws. Seemingly, she hasn't yet addressed issues surrounding her role as a then senior public prosecutor. She's jumped straight to the Lieutenant General Dumsani Khumalo's charges, and I don't know if we should make something of that particular skip, because it's the first issue that brings us to the IDAC issue, because the question is whether or not her conduct then can be attributed to the conduct of IDAC now under her watch.
And just to be clear, Kenny, to make sure our viewers keeping up, when she was a senior prosecutor, that's when there were claims made that she was trying to essentially protect Feroz Khan.
Yes, indeed, and those Khan allegations, or I guess a close proximity, seem to also feature in the Brigadier Dineo Mukwele case, which is a fraud and corruption case about her appointment. Now, Brian Pariachi struggled to show where her appointment was unlawful, where she didn't meet the requirements, where an external applicant rather couldn't be appointed in the position, and whether or not she had committed an offense. I think it was like a future prediction that was criticized here by Pariachi. But I find it quite interesting that she's jumped straight to that case and hasn't dealt with the initial complaint that she faced by Witness O, and what then must the Commission make of that? Or is that something that's going to come up in one of the later statements? We'll have to see. But she's jumped straight to the Brigadier Mukwele case, seemingly in a bid to defend it and defend that it's a legitimate criminal matter that falls within IDAC's mandate. We'll see during the probing questioning whether that particular defense will stand or will it fall apart before the probe.
Yeah, and we do know that that investigation against Khumalo came from a referral that comes from Fidel Adams. Fidel Adams, of course, is a parliamentarian who's had a mouthful to say about both General Khumalo as well as Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. So let's take it to the part of the statement by Andrea Johnson where she speaks about this referral and how, as far as she is concerned, it led to an investigation with unearthed sufficient evidence for cause for possible prosecution. Take a listen.
When one looks at all the cases referred to IDAC by Mr. Adams, they depict the capture of systems and processes for private interests by the head of CI and other senior managers. This too is an issue I intend to testify about should I be granted leave to. 28. The picture that has emerged is that the appointment and installation of certain persons in certain positions within the Crime Intelligence Unit, CIU, by Lieutenant General Khumalo and his co-accused persons helped them strategically to access funding without following proper processes. This is because their token appointments would not stop them from their unlawful acts.
So there you have it. But at some stage, Andrea Johnson speaks about her not being able to go into the details because, as you know, the matter is sub judice. And Kenny, I wonder what we make of that because, frankly, we were a bit scant on the details.
And the details matter in the case of the appointment of Brigadier Dineo Mukwele that gives birth to the fraud and corruption charges, because it is through those details that Advocate Silo was able to actually get to the flaws in the investigation itself, which could speak to operational methods of IDAC or could speak to something allegedly more sinister. The Commission must get to the bottom of that, but it's not going to be helpful to discuss this matter in themes if you're going to refer to persons allegedly being appointed in order to get control of resources or justify the use of resources within crime intelligence. Then you're going to have to go into the details, because Brian Pareachi failed to substantiate some of those issues when they were flagged to him, and now as the head of IDAC, this is the only opportunity you get to do so, and she's going to have to, as she traverses the rest of the statements, get to that point. Otherwise, you're left with the evidence sitting at this allegedly being something that could have been more sinister.
Absolutely. Kenny Mapanga, thanks very much indeed. We'll wait and see to get a sense of how things unfold from here on. The Commission is set to continue with its work from around 11:35. Much has been said, but if the claims against Andrea Johnson are anything to go by, there's a whole lot more, I imagine, that she'll have to answer to.